Hello, friends. Welcome to .NET API Review and English today for reasons. We have a full scrolly screen. I guess technically we have a perfectly full screen. Do note that if there are any issues that you care about that are on the backlog that are marked as milestone none, those are all at the bottom of a priority queue, so you should poke the people who own them, like, I don't know, one Mr. Tanner Gooding or one Adam Sitnick, that they should assign milestones to their issues, whether it be 11 or future. All right, but today we're going to pop back a couple weeks and hopefully get to the low-level API for creating pipe, but we paused that one because we wanted to talk about safe child process handle first. So first up is Adam with 123380.
Jeremy, are you going to start sharing your screen?
I'm sharing it with everyone except you guys. All right.
So, as you know, system diagnostic process is far from perfect, and I'm working on making the life of our customers better. However, there are some bugs, problems. For example, the ability to run into deadlocks that we cannot just fix by changing the existing APIs. For example, we cannot force the people to do certain things in the right order. To address some of these problems, I'm going to provide high-level helpers. There is a link somewhere here. Overall, I would like to give the people the ability to capture process output, discard output, fire and forget. Like, I have studied all of the common cases, and I have built a prototype for them. But to build this prototype, I have used low-level building block that allowed me to do all of that. And I have studied the way people are not using process and identified some scenarios that are quite advanced. However, they exist. And in order to make our customers stop using their own platform invokes and get on board, I believe we should expose some low-level APIs. You could think of it as of a safe file handle and random access type. So we give you an ability to open a file, to create it, and then read or write. You can use FileStream if you want. We have file APIs, but we also have this low-level APIs. The first part of the proposal is an option bag. The option bag will be shared by all layers. It includes filing, arguments, environment variables, the working directory. These are things that are also part of process start info. But now I would like to introduce some new ones. First of all, so far, all of the process APIs, when we were starting a new process, we were inheriting all of the inheritable file handles from current process. It could lead to some very nasty edge case bugs. Just to give you one example. When we read from a pipe, because, for example, we capture the output, the end of file is signaled only when all of the copies of the pipe have been closed, which means that if there is one process that got the pipes because it was supposed to, and another one that accidentally inherited it, the first one won't report end of file until the second one dies and closes the handle. And fundamentally, we have been discussing the ability to limit the inheritance for quite a long time. And since I now have the luxury of introducing new APIs, I would like them to start processes only with standard input, output, and error inherited, everything else not. And the inherited handles property on the option bag is basically the allow list. So if you want anything else besides standard input, output, and error, please add it here. Common case could be somebody using anonymous pipes, And as you know, we need to specify the exact value to the child process in order for it to be able to use it. And of course, it needs to be inheritable for the process to use it. Another thing, two new properties. A pattern that I have noticed quite frequently is that people sign up for console cancel key press event in order to detect when somebody has pressed Control C and then in the parent process and then kill the child process. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but for most, it's not going to work when it's a forced termination. It is because we're just not going to get such an event. However, both Windows and Linux, and to some degree macOS, expose a possibility to kill on parent death, no matter if it was graceful termination or not. So this API was requested a while ago. I would like to expose it in the option bag. The name is kill on parent death. Last but not least, create new process group. We have exposed it in .NET 10 for Windows only, because for Windows, if you would like to send a signal to a process, it needs to be a part of dedicated process group. However, Unix and Mac also have the concept of process groups, and actually starting your own process group is quite complex on Unix because you have to do it after fork and before exec. So you basically have to go very low level in order to be able to do that properly. So I just would like to expose this possibility to all of the operating systems. And one of the nice things that it will allow us will be the ability to send a signal to entire process group. And for example, we would be able to kill all of the processes that are part of this process group. Yes?
Sorry, just can you educate me a little bit on the behavior of process groups? So if I don't create a new process group, will I be in the parent process group implicitly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But if I do create a new process group, then it'll be independent. If the parent gets a signal or whatever, would it not go to me? Or do you have like nested groups?
I think they are nested, and
okay.
We also have sessions, which are something even, one layer above. But the two things that new process groups are going to unlock on Unix is the ability to send a signal to all of the children of given process, which would allow us for very quick termination. Currently, we receive plenty of complaints about how long it takes to terminate entire process tree on both Windows and Linux with process. But if we do it in a way that upfront before creating the process, we tell it, hey, create a new process group, then we can just send the termination signal. Of course, we need a constructor. I decided for it to just take the file name. And then next, the new API that I would like to introduce is the ability to resolve path in explicit way. So currently, if we start a process, let's say we do new process starting for quotes.net. Then process will go to, it will use the syscall that resolves the path. It goes to current directory, then it goes to path. It includes also user folders, etc., etc. However, what I personally don't like is that as of now, we don't have the ability to check what we are going to run before running it. Moreover, from the performance perspective, this is a repeatable process. If I would like to, let's say, run MS build multiple times from the same process, currently we always resolve the path. So if we expose such a method, we give the users the ability to just cache it and always use the resolved path. Of course, they can do it today. They can provide explicit path. Yeah, absolute path, sorry. Absolute path, but they may miss for example, checking everything in the right order.
What's the reason for not resolving non-full pass in the constructor? Sorry if you already said that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I was thinking about this. So to me, like, it would be a performance hit, like, and because typically I would not expect constructors to do a lot of work from me. However, the advantage would be that if, let's say, that given path does not exist, we would get the error immediately.
I just don't like there being two things. So I do get your point about it like being unexpected to kind of have expensive operations in the constructor. Though you could work around it in the cases where you already knew the full path, I suppose. But it's something to know. I guess the upside is like, if you don't use the factory today with the partial path, like, and you restart the process, it ends up being slower, right? Because you don't get to amortize it. You have to do it each time you start the process. You have to re-resolve the path, or does that get cached?
Yep. Levi, I can see that you got unmuted.
Oh, I was going to ask a follow-up question once you were done with this.
Okay. Yeah. So Stefan's observation was correct. So I don't have anything to add to his question.
Yeah. So I guess constructors do, for the most part, tend to not really do a whole lot of work. They just tend to capture values until you actually kick off the operation. That said, like, I can't imagine a world where anybody would construct a process start options and then not have as their final operation an actual call to start. Like, if you're constructing one of these things, you're almost certainly committed to doing the expensive operation anyway. Why else would you do this? So in practice, it might not matter where the expensive work is done, even though generally we try not to do it in the constructor.
Yeah, I agree. I also don't see a scenario where people wouldn't like to do it. Like, we have to resolve it anyway, right?
Are there any flags that you would want to take in resolve path that control how the resolution takes place? Like, are there ways that the underlying operating system is exposed to customize how the resolution works?
There is one flag that I was thinking of. So on Windows, the default search order is current directory and then path. On Unix, it's the opposite. And I have seen some bug reports that initially we thought maybe there are security issues, where people were surprised with the fact that we search current directory first, or that we search it at all. So we could do, for example, Boolean optional parameter that would be like search current directory, set to true, and those who don't want to search it could set it to false. But that's the only case I see right now.
Well, I'm thinking if you look at, go ahead.
Yeah. So another one could be maybe like don't resolve anything, use only this path. Like, absolutely don't resolve anything.
Yeah, well, I assume that if you're passing in a full path, you don't, like, no resolution would take place, right? Because, like, you have the full path there. But I'm looking at things like how DLL import works, for instance, and there are all kinds of flags that you can pass in there to control, look here, look there, but don't look at this other place. And I'm wondering if you've ever seen scenarios where people might want to specify those same things for executable resolution. It sounds like people might get confused as to the ordering, but they don't necessarily want to be able to turn off any particular thing.
Yeah, that is correct observation.
Okay.
Is Resolve Path also going to do Windows path extension interpolation?
Yes.
So if I give it just the string calc, it'll find calc.exe in system32.
Exactly.
And presumably the logic would be whatever is appropriate for the current operating system.
That's correct. But I also wanted to mention that it introduces a risk because so far we were using a Cisco on Windows. So as of today, on Unix, we do it on our own because the order is different. On Windows, we use a syscall that resolves the path. But it resolves it and then runs the process. There are no two separate syscalls. So if, in theory, if there is like, let's say, a security vulnerability in the syscall and they want to change the way paths are solved, and we do explicit path solving on our own, we have to provide a fix for our copy, basically.
Well, remember, we're also in that chat with the owners of Create Process, kind of asking them to whether they would consider exposing an API that does this on our behalf, or whether they would just shore up their documentation so that we could follow it. Let's say that one of those two things will happen, right? That kind of limits how badly things can happen. Or rather, it kind of limits how much we can deviate from the spec, right? Like if they publish a proper spec and we follow it, well, it's spec, right? The environment property, is that, how does that work? Is that stuff that's added to the current environment before the process is launched, or does that reflect the current environment? Like, how do you imagine that working?
I think it would be best to mimic what process start info does, which by default, it reflects the current process.
I see. So the idea is when you create a process start options, the environment dictionary here is a copy of the current process's environment, and then you can mutate it to your heart's content.
Exactly.
Okay.
And behind the scenes, if you don't mutate it and you don't even touch it, we will use a cheaper way to spawn the process and say, just derive all of the environment variables without going from like mapping managed strings into, you know, the way Windows expects it to be encoded.
Well, doesn't that kind of introduce a time of check, time of use issue, where if I create the process start options and then change the local environment and then call start, like something unexpected could be passed into the child process? Don't you actually have to snapshot it at the moment this object is created?
That's a good question, but this optimization was so far implemented on Windows in full framework and core. However, I think that behind the scenes, when you mutate the current process environment variables on Windows, we actually call the syscall that updates them, so it would not be an issue. But on Linux, we don't. We mutate a copy that we just keep in memory because we refer to it so frequently. So I think on Linux it would be a problem.
Okay. I guess the only other comment I had here was in the arguments property. Because it's a get only property, that means that you can't really use nice initializer syntax. Like you're not able to say like new process start options, open brace, arguments equals open square bracket, foo, comma, bar, comma, baz, close square bracket, because that requires a property to be settable. Instead, you have to keep calling add over and over and over again.
If you use the curly braces instead of square brackets, it calls add for you.
Yeah,
Or like-
Jeremy, could you please scroll down a bit? I
It's-
have it
Because
somewhere
it's the
in my
collection
samples.
initializer, not the.
Oh, you're right. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, but it's great that you brought this up because by default in BCL, we use abstractions for collections
Mhm.
because they're less restrictive. However, one of the contributors have raised a concern that if it's an I list, it does not come with add range. And if they want to add multiple arguments at once, they have to implement their own loop. So we
Right.
could change it to list. And another thing that I was wondering, the way process start info works, if you insert a null, it's equivalent of removing the environment variable. So basically you have two ways of like not inheriting given environment variable, either remove it from this dictionary or set it to null. And I was wondering whether I should, keep the behavior consistent and allow for nulls, or remove the
Yes.
null ability here and say, okay.
I like it. I mean, I get that it's like two ways to do things, which I'm normally against. But I mean, if people are setting environment variable to null, they want to clear it out, and having to like contort it and be like, oh, the value's null, now I have to call remove. Like, eh. So I like the way you have it. As far as the iList iDictionary thing goes, since I have the mic, I feel like if we change iList, we should change all of them to be concrete collection types, but we generally don't do that. I don't know if like add range is compelling enough personally, but that's definitely just kind of an opinion.
Yeah, well, the meta rule. So there are a couple of things at play here. For one, there is the guideline that says a collection type property should not be settable. So these are adhering to that. And then we have the take the weakest you can as a parameter and return the strongest you can as a return. Since these are get only, really the strongest you can as a return should kick in. So if this I list is really list of T, we should say list of T. And if it's dictionary, we should say that. But if it's a custom dictionary type to handle your environment cloning, then iDictionary would be the strongest type that you can return.
Yeah, behind the scenes, it's custom dictionary to allow for some more performant operations.
Yeah, but if the arguments and the inherited handles are just new list on
They are a
first
list,
access,
and I
then,
think they are going to.
then I would get rid of the eyes.
All right, based on that, yeah, I'm okay with, so remove the two iLists, but keep the iDictionary.
Because it's a non-public type that iDictionary is the strongest type it has.
I don't think it has to be settable to read Levi's comment, but maybe it should be.
Well, it was based on Tanner's comment in chat that if we're pushing people toward collection expressions, then this
I
doesn't
see.
support that.
Yeah, I like square brackets more than curly brackets, so we should have that. I mean that kind of non-ironically.
I mean, so that would be a change in a 20-year guideline.
Yeah.
Which,
I think that guideline is a bit antiquated at this point.
as I said, which we can discuss, but the
We've definitely been moving away from that in higher level libraries. You look through all of Microsoft extensions and whatnot, and all of our collections, or many of our collection properties, are settable, nullable, settable, iList, iDictionary, that kind of thing. One of the nice things about, we could explore language changes as well. That's a smaller thing, a bigger thing, longer term thing. But with collection expressions, you can do things like spreads, which is pretty nice, and you can't do those with the older collection initializer syntax. And you can only do the collection expressions if there's a setter.
Fair enough. I mean, I will say I've never understood do not provide settable collection properties. That one would be from the Christoph era. I just know that it's there.
I mean,
My
sometimes
guess-
things get really weird, but yeah.
My guess is it's just in case, like, you know, if you're doing an iList, if you make it settable, that takes away some opportunities for optimizations and validation later. If I had to guess the motivation.
Yeah, I
But-
mean, you can do things like use your own custom list type that tracks changes, and you can't do that if you allow it to be set to an arbitrary object. But we never take advantage of that. Then I guess there's also the, you know, if you have other members that are possibly initializing the collection or doing something with the collection, maybe it's less weird to not have a setter. But in general, I don't think there's a real downside, and there's definitely upsides to being able to set that to whatever arbitrary collection you have coming in. Otherwise, if you already have these in a collection, you need to do really weird copying things to get them into this collection, which is especially painful given that there's no built-in copy functionality on iList or iDictionary.
Yeah, but for iList, if it's get only, we should get rid of the I's. The iDictionary one, I think, would have to stay as is.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, make it normal list get set. You can keep the iDictionary get only since it's special.
Wait.
Well-
If we add a setter, why do we need to make it list?
Right. Once we add a
Oh, those
setter,
are
the I
separate
comes back.
things.
Yeah.
Oh, it comes back.
So if
Sure.
it's
I
get
mean, I
only,
guess
it's
that's
list
fine.
because it's a return value. If it's get set, then it's also a parameter type.
I mean, the other thing is if you make it settable. I mean, the list still has the convenience of the add range, if that's what you want, right? Because it's still not nullable. So not everyone is necessarily going to be using like initializer syntax, like most people will. But some people will be taking it from another variable or something, or
Like,
copying.
you could write an add range extension method though on
Yeah.
iList.
We should
Yeah,
really
totally.
ship one. If once we figure out, well, I can't remember what we were blocking it on. I feel like we were blocking it on something to do with interface inheritance or something. But as a separate issue, we should really finally add an extension for iList to add range.
Yeah. Because especially if all iLists for all practical purposes under the covers have amortized O of 1 insertion, like add range is O of n. So yeah.
But then we would need to consider a breaking change because so many people have implemented their own copy of it that we would break all of them.
Well, hopefully theirs would do the equivalent of what ours will do, and they're not like removing half the collection in order to add things in.
Yeah. Source breaking changes are not the worst thing in the world.
Well, that wouldn't even be source
Agreed.
breaking, right? Because ours would win from an ambiguity perspective, I think.
I think
Why?
a dim would beat an extension
it's-
method. Yeah.
Because
Uh,
it's
it'd be a dim, obviously. Yeah, I was. I was
well,
thinking
even
of
if it
as
wasn't,
an
if, it's in,
extension method.
if the extension is in the same assembly as the interface,
It gets
then
preferred. I
I
didn't
think
know
it
that.
gets preferred.
Okay.
That works.
I think.
Does it?
I'm not positive.
I thought all extensions were peers and would be a multiple valid targets.
I
and
could be wrong.
compile
Maybe
fields.
I'm making up a rule that I wished for, but I thought that existed.
I'm
I
pretty
like
sure
your
it's
world
just
too.
same namespace wins.
Sorry, say that
There's
again,
the-
Tanner.
I'm pretty sure it's just same namespace wins. There's the closeness factor, but I don't think assembly comes in. I think it's just namespace level.
Okay.
So if we put
And-
it in system collections generic, it should win, unless someone else defines something in system collections generic themselves.
Which there's like a
Well,
30%
regardless, we would want
chance
to
that
do
they
it.
did. So.
This is ringing bells now. We would want to do it as a dim anyway, so that list as that range can properly implement it.
Yep.
And then that dim thing was blocked on our general dim thing, which was blocked on our can we make iList derived from our read-only list and that whole ball of wax.
Which is blocked on F# still.
So what was the consensus then on whether these properties generally should be get or get set for the collections?
So let's start with the
For-
list
for-
ones.
From my perspective, as an options bag like this, we should have everything be get set. And then you can use all modern language features, and there's kind of no downside, and copying just works and spreads just work. And I don't see an upside to limiting it, but
Generally, I would agree with that, but environment is a very special baby here. Also, because if someone is able to provide their own dictionary, what happens if they use a string comparer that's not compatible with the current OS string comparer? For example, environment variables on Windows are case insensitive, but on Linux they're case sensitive.
That's a good point. But we can we can do environment different, I think.
yeah,
for
I'm
those
more thinking
reasons.
about arguments is the one that I care
Okay.
more about.
Yeah, that's why I said
Yeah,
let's start
arguments
talking
and
about the
inherited
list
handles.
ones. So
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Get set, we can keep it iList. We do similar things in higher level libraries, like ASP.NET Core. We've never cared about not making collections settable, like unless we were doing like a special collection type.
yeah, and I can believe that this guideline was not anticipating options bag types, that it's more of you've got some object that has a queue attached to it, and it's like, well, you can expose the queue, but you shouldn't let someone replace your queue because you've probably grabbed a second reference to it somewhere.
Does it need to be fully settable? Would init be enough? Because I don't foresee many people doing an approach where they want to construct a whole thing and then throw it away and reassign it later.
I could see them maybe setting inherited handles or arguments in an if block, which means that if the whole thing is marked init, that would be difficult.
Well, and
I agree.
So if
Sorry.
it's a init and they're adding some things in the inherent block, then they can just do .add after that. I think the real thing here is like if you want the shorthand for efficiently initializing it with your default set, you want to
Okay.
use a collection expression. And I'm wondering if init is enough for that. I mean, I don't have anything against set, just init might be enough.
I get that we
I
could
have
uninit.
such I have such like a knee-jerk reaction to init because lots of times when it's been there, it just makes my consumption life much more challenging when I want to do conditional setting or the like. And I don't know that that would be an issue in this particular case, but unless there's a really strong reason to want to limit it, I would say let's just do the simple thing.
Sounds good.
And do set.
Yeah, I guess again going with an options bag. This is yours until you pass it to somebody. I don't see a distinction between before and after construction.
Yeah. Well, so Adam, you're the person who would ostensibly own this API. Like, do you have any good counter argument for like why they shouldn't be settable, or is it just kind of tradition?
I just wanted to follow the guidelines to like minimize the amount of time we spend talking about this.
No, it's fine. I just wondered if it would maybe it would mess something up that you envisioned taking place within the implementation.
No, absolutely not. Only environment is the one that gets the special handling.
Okay.
Are we going to keep it iList or are we going to make it concrete with list of T?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, if we put the set on, it stays stays as the interface list, and if we leave the set off, then it can become concrete list.
Yeah, the motivation for add range goes down when you can just set it for sure. And it seems more consistent with the iDictionary and stuff to leave it iList. It's more flexible. Why not?
Okay. Kill on parent death. I agree that is the name of the signal in Unix, but we have not used the word death in any .NET API, so I don't know that we want to start here. So kill on parent exit.
Yeah, I like exit more than termination.
Yeah,
because termination almost implies gracefulness, like sig term.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah. Somebody could argue that exit implies that they gracefully called exit, but
Yeah, that'd be my concern.
I feel like we are that I would think of exit as being more like process.wait for exit. I think is just process.wait for the process to not exist, and so
Right.
we've already introduced that in this space.
Yeah, you could be like on parent end, but that's terrible. It's too ambiguous. I would prefer exit if we can't use death. I actually like death, but I'm sure that will get flagged somewhere. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
I have used this name because it was the community proposal. Another idea I had was to express what it does. So don't outlive the parent. Like that, or something related to outliving the parent or not. And
I like your proposal here, but maybe change depth because, like Jeremy said, we don't use it.
And another important question, should this be set to true by default? Should this API be opinionated? Because I think that in most of the cases, we don't want the process to outlive the parent. However, it has been the default behavior for years.
Well, if you're just kicking off a task and you don't really care about its output, then you don't care if it outlives a parent, right? Is that the common case for using this API or not?
I
That's
think
the question.
the common case is to ensure that basically a proper resource cleanup, because basically process is the only resource that does not get cleaned up when the process exits, right? So and plenty of people treat processes as resources, and they often live just for the purpose of providing some service to the parent. And when the parent exits, there's no reason to keep them alive, and they can cause trouble, like keep some files locked or whatever.
They can cause trouble, but I think the default behavior on both POSIX and Windows is that child processes do not automatically terminate when the parent terminates.
That is correct. And yeah, I think it answers my question, basically. If it has been the default for years on all of the platforms, let's keep it like this.
So I happen to agree that I do think the default should be to let it outlive the parent, but I don't think just because POSIX and Windows does it is by itself enough, because like they can't change for back compat reasons either. Like for instance, in Go, just as an example for API review, like they set like negling or like to disabled or no delay to true by default on their sockets. It's not what POSIX does, it's not what Windows does or BSD sockets, but it's a better default. I wish we had done that. It would be too late for us to do it now because we've already shipped systemnet socket. All that said, yeah, I probably should stick with the POSIX default here, but not just because of that. I think here it's probably the better default behavior because people will launch stuff in the background.
Steve, you built the task universe. Is task creation options attached to parent analogous here? Should we try latching onto the same terms, or is it a different beast entirely?
Attached to parent is something I wish we never shipped, and I wouldn't base anything on it at all.
Okay.
Love it.
It's one, if I had to list like my top, 5 regrets for things that we've done in .NET, that's one of them.
Fair enough. All right, so kill is a verb we already have on process. So yeah, if everybody else is happy with death, we can go with death. But I see it as not a word we've used. I believe, and Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong, that on process, all of the things that say exited mean not running. So whether it's a graceful or a graceless termination, exited is still true.
True.
That's a good point.
So,
Yeah, like wait for exit and stuff.
yeah, so if wait for exit handles both graceful and abnormal termination, then kill on parent exit I think uses the same terms that we've already used for process.
Yeah, I think exit's better than death, and I might prefer termination or terminate instead, just because I think that's a slightly more explicit term in this context, but I think exit is fine.
Well, doesn't it, like you mentioned that exit could be confused with like gracefully calling exit, right? But like
Yeah.
it could be confused with like sig term as well. I if you use termination, I don't know. I think exit's fine, especially since it's already used.
Well, and then
Yeah, wait
both
for exit, like you said,
POSIX
yeah.
and Windows provide both terminate and exit APIs. So at the OS level, there is somewhat of a distinction there.
Right? But assuming this is still going to, in some way, shape, or form, interact with the process class, exit appears in many places, and terminate appears nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, we tend to use terminate to deal with refer to threads rather than processes.
So
I think termination also implies more of like a request than exit does, though. I mean, I get exit's also like is this calling whatever, but
It's actually the inverse of how the OS do it. Exit is the graceful, and terminate is this may corrupt your process state if it terminates, or even your global DLL state shared across the OS.
except for the sig term signal. But yeah, so what APIs are you talking about? You're just talking about like
On
syscalls.
Win32, it's terminate process and exit
Okay.
process, but equivalent ones for POSIX.
in POSIX, you send sig term for please
graceful.
gracefully exit yourself, and if you don't, I'm probably going to follow it up in a moment with sig kill.
Exactly.
That is correct. And I actually want to introduce this value to the enumeration we have in this proposal later below.
So for POSIX, I was thinking of, for example, they have exit, which is described as terminates the calling process immediately. But I do think exit is fine, and I think it fits in with the existing terms of process, so I think it's fine.
What does inherited handles really mean here, Adam? Like
An allow list of additional handles you would like to inherit beside standard input, output, and error.
right, but like if I'm on Linux and I pass I guess I don't actually have safex509 handle as a public type, but let's assert that safex509 handle was a public type. It's not really going to be inherited. So are these limited to file handles, or are these like, is there a more specific type we can put here that works, or is it just some types will work and sometimes won't?
That's a great question. The problem is that we have safe file handle, safe pipe handle, and safe socket handle. They all derive from safe handle, but for example, safe pipe handle does not derive from safe handle, from safe file handle. So if we just allow for safe handles, we allow for all of them. And in the regard of whether we would allow for something that is not supported,
Like, are you going to ignore it? You're going to throw?
I think the operating system will throw. I think one example would be safe process handle. And I think it would throw.
Can we shove a base class underneath the 3 IO handle kinds?
I think they all derive from safe handles 0 or something is invalid.
Right.
Like,
but like we could add just safe IO handle extending safe handle 0 or -1 is invalid, and then say that safe file handle, safe socket handle, and safe pipe handle all extend safe IO handle.
We could do that.
And then here we would say IO handles can be inherited. Now, somebody could still inherit it themselves unless we can make it non-inheritable because they're all contained in one assembly. But at least it would be a much closer marker of process handles don't get to fit in there, etc.
Yeah, and like, is there a reason we even want to prevent people from inheriting from it if they could? I guess another question I have, is there any scenario where you want the child process to inherit a handle where you don't have the managed safe handle? I guess I just don't know enough about inheriting handles to know like what the use cases are. I know you could like inherit sockets and stuff, and that's used sometimes for like load balancing, like between processes. But I don't know like the full breadth of why people would inherit handles.
When it comes to, for example, HTTP listener, I know that in the past it was creating inheritable handle, and because of that it was causing trouble. But to be honest, the only valid scenario I see for specifying additional handles are anonymous pipes. As of today, I expect that there are some other advanced scenarios I haven't recognized yet, but anonymous pipe is the obvious one to me.
Mutexes are a pretty common scenario where somebody would want to inherit a handle.
Got it. But you would expect that any managed app that would want to inherit a mutex would be able to get a safe handle for that? Yeah, probably.
I'm pretty sure we expose one, yeah.
Yeah.
But if we went down the path of safe IO handle, then we'd have to also say safe mutex handle then.
Mm-hmm.
But I
If
don't
that's
see
the
a
thing
safe
that you want to
mutex handle.
inherit. Yeah. Is there a safe handle on mutex, I assume?
There is. It's safe wait handle, which kind of makes sense because it's not a file object, right? So it's not a file handle, it's a wait handle, same thing the process exposes. And thread and a few other things.
All right. So, I mean, if safe handle's the best thing that it is, then it's, I guess if we're just passing these numbers to the OS and it comes back with that doesn't look like it's in a table of a thing I can inherit, then you'll get the exception. So
yeah,
it's just really
or
about
shared memory, like Steve said in chat.
Yeah, what like we've introduced, we have safe library handle. Like I don't know if that's going to inherit. We have, I don't know if it's public. We have safe malloc handle. Like all sorts of things don't feel inheritable, and so it's just we need to know what it does.
But that seems like something that we would just document, like, hey, caller, you need to understand what types of handles your OS sees as inheritable. And if you pass things that aren't inheritable to us, like things might blow up. And things might blow up in unexpected ways. Like I wouldn't think that it should be incumbent on us to block people passing nonsense arguments here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the way it would fail today, we would most likely fail to duplicate the handle, and we would give some error saying invalid value or something.
All right, and are we happy with the resolve path method? Being, if you call the constructor, it doesn't resolve, and if you call the method, it does.
I feel like I'd just rather combine that into the constructor.
It is confusing as to when someone would want to use a constructor versus a factory. I admit that.
All right, so kill the static method.
Well, I would almost say if you want the static method, have the static method return a file info object instead of a process start options.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of which, if we decide to resolve in the constructor, the property could also return file info instead of just a string, the file name property.
And then do you want to take overload this constructor that takes the file info?
I would be fine with that.
like,
Okay.
file info and directory info come with extra overhead. Do we want to pay that overhead?
Sorry, Jan, you're really quiet, Jan. We're having trouble hearing you.
Oh, sorry.
Jan said that file info and directory info come with additional performance overhead.
They do, yeah. And also file info, I don't think guarantees that the file actually exists, does it?
It does not validate that,
Right.
but you
It
can
also
just call
doesn't
the
even-
exist.
It doesn't guarantee it's even a file.
I mean, you can call resolve path and then call file.delete, and then you're in the same state.
Right.
Until you call create
You
process.
could also
you can delete it.
You could also make resolve a method, that's an instance method on process start options itself that says, hey, once you've passed in a file name, if you then call resolve, we'll mutate the process start options object to make the file name parameter or property be a fully resolved file name. And if we can't resolve the file name because we can't find the file on disk, then we throw an exception, right?
So that you're saying leave string file name, and if you pass in calc, it says calc, but then if you call the instance method resolve, now it says Windows System 32 calc.exe.
That's one option, yeah.
I think that'd be okay.
It allows you to keep resolve as an explicit action, as an explicit method. It just changes it from a static to an instance method.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess, are we always going to call resolve, or on Windows are we just going to pass calc and let them resolve it?
I think we are always going to resolve. The reason for that is Windows recommends to invoke the create process syscall with explicit resolved path. And the reason for that is, as of today, we have a bug. It's not a security issue, it's a bug. If in process start info you specify .NET space -- help as a file name, we are going to provide it to Windows, and it's going to resolve .NET and then use -- as help as the first argument. And if we resolve it on our own, we will just throw an exception saying that, hey, it's not valid path, it does not exist. And the reason why somebody might want that is that they may be, for example, reading file path for the process from the user, and they don't want to let them append any other arguments.
Okay, so do we want public void resolve file name? What are we thinking?
If the file name is being passed as a constructor parameter, then the resolve method could just be a parameterless method.
Yeah, but
But if we're always doing it anyway, then what's the point, right?
So
yeah, and
so
to
you
be
can
honest, I'm
inspect it
wondering
before you call start.
I'm thinking if we should just always resolve it in the constructor, because it would be, the simplest solution. We would just do the right thing behind the scenes and throw a constructor. The disadvantage is that some people could get surprised with the fact that a simple constructor performed, 3 syscalls, like got current directory, get path, and then check if file exists.
Yeah. For this particular type, that doesn't bother me all that much, just because, like I said earlier, if you're constructing an instance of this type, you're going to call start on it at some point. Like, you're not going to create one of these things just for funsies.
Agreed.
Okay. And you said for environment, if you do nothing, you get the current environment, but if you log environment.count, then you get a snapshot as of when you called count, or when you first load the property.
Yes.
Fair enough. So it snapshots on first read. All right. Okay.
And
And then we do
namespace,
have
yes, the elephant in the room.
I mean, system diagnostics, right?
Yes and no. So we want to stay within the system diagnostics process library in order to not ask the users to load another assembly if they want to use it. However, I personally don't like the current name because it refers to diagnostics. And here, those APIs that I'm providing, they are not going to give you any diagnostics information. You will be just able to run the processes, run them, get exit code, capture output, error, whatever, not related to diagnostics at all. And I was wondering what would be good name for the namespace. I wasn't able to come up with any good idea. The only I had was system processes, but I know it sucks. So yeah, I need your help.
So at the OS level, a lot of the process APIs are part of process and threads. So system.threading is actually where I would intuitively go to look for process APIs, barring knowing that it's normally in system diagnostics up until this point.
I think we're trying to be too clever here. Like, processes and system diagnostics. Like, I wish it wasn't. Like, I get that process itself gives you diagnostic info, but like, I feel like the process start options should go next to process.
Yeah.
Will process start options be usable with process.start?
It's an open question.
Because if this is in the same namespace as process, I think the answer has to be yes.
I think it should be. But I haven't seen the comprehensive proposal. But like, makes sense.
And conversely,
Well,
if for some reason this can't be used with process.start, like there are things on it that won't work, I think it should not live in the same place. I think it'll just be too confusing.
I feel like
would
if we were
actually
using.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. All I was going to say is if this thing produces something other than system diagnostics process, I would agree with that. But I'm not sure if it does result in getting one of those. Still very related.
Well,
I
this is
would
just an
expect-
options bag, right?
The options bag, right, but the options bag is used with a safe child process handle type, and I would expect that the safe child process handle type would have a get process method on it, or we would introduce process.getProcess by handle, which would take in a safe child process handle. Like that's the thing that ties the start options to process going through the safe handle.
If
That
the
is
normal
correct.
usage. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to say that in the past we have received feature requests for letting the people create a process out of a handle. And this is absolutely on my to-do list.
Yeah, like this seems like the right place to put it. Because you can already do it from the ID, right? IDs can get recycled, blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah. All I was going to say is if we're using like the safe file process handle or whatever, we expect that to be like most people to use that without directly interacting with the process unless they call like a get process kind of API. I can see putting in a different namespace a little more.
While we're still noodling on that, there was a question in chat regarding the initialization, which was asking, should you be able to create one of these, and again, I'll go back to saying you're passing in just a string calc, then modify the environment to change the path, and then have that take effect before path resolution happens. Because if yes, then resolve goes back to a method that happens or gets called, later, or gets resolved by the process create, whatever that happens to be. So are we opposed to that design? Are we embracing that design? That does have an impact here.
I don't think changing. So, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that when you change path to pass into a child process, the environment block that you're passing into the child process does not affect how the child process executable itself is located. I'm pretty sure the child executable, location logic uses only the parent's path, not the child's path.
Yeah.
Because you're not actually modifying the environment block, right? You're saying, here's the thing that I want to pass into the child process, but you haven't started the child process until after you've located it.
That's correct.
So shouldn't matter.
Fair enough.
But it was a very good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
right.
think the question really is, do we think that we want this to never talk to the existing process class, or do we think that there's a world where they should talk to each other?
Safe child process handle and process should absolutely talk to each other.
Yeah, which means that putting it in system diagnostics means that we have process start info and process start options sitting next to each other. But that seems fine. It's sort of the old and the new.
Yeah.
How do we direct people to the new?
Obsolete.
I don't think we are going to obsolete because there are some scenarios that we are going to keep supporting in process info, but not in we are not going to support it in the new option bug. One example is use shell execute. It's Windows thing. We are not going to try to mimic it here. It's often a security trap. It won't be supported here.
Yeah, I hesitate to obsolete things in general.
Fair enough.
Like-
An analyzer, which
Yeah.
obsolete is just let the compiler do the analyzer for you.
Yeah.
There was an issue raised by the MS Build team asking for us to provide, or VS Test team providing us an analyzer for common deadlocks patterns. And I think that such an analyzer could then point to the new APIs. It would be basically, you're doing this very wrong, use this one-liner here.
I mean, those feel a little unrelated to me. One is you're using process start info without saying you shall execute true, or maybe it's you were using it and saying you shall execute false, and the other is deadlocks.
Okay, so the reason is that why you would be using the new APIs, and one thing is like avoid deadlocks. Just let us do all of the heavy lifting. And another one is take advantage of some of the new features, like kill on parent exit. So this is why I mentioned the deadlocks. So we should be recommending to use the new APIs if you are using the old ones wrong. But if you use them in the right way, there is no need to recommend using it.
Fair enough. Okay. So as we move into safe child process handle, I guess assuming we're saying system diagnostics to match process, unless somebody tells me differently. But I'll ask the question, do we need a new safe handle here? What's wrong with just using safe process handle?
One thing, two things. I haven't analyzed what safe process handle exposes, but overall, it allows you to think of any process. And here I want it to be only allowed for the child processes. And the reason for that being is that on Unix, if you would like to monitor process exit, you have the you should like wait for it to exit and then reap it. And I really want us to just focus on child processes here. It's not like I want to do diagnostics, there is some random process running, give me a handle for it. So it's like a subset of all of the possibilities that you could do with all of the processes.
Some of the APIs would be, I guess it doesn't really matter on, I was going to say it'd be nice on safe process handle, but people don't use it. So they have processes, they have a safe process handle for the most part that has similar APIs.
But I'm still confused as to what the problem would be to move these methods onto the safe process handle. Like if it's not the right thing, if you have a given safe process handle and you're not intended to call kill or resume or whatever on it, then just don't call it.
Or is there a way to de-optimize it? Because like a lot of it makes sense. It's like, okay, yeah, there's this proper way to wait if it's a child process. Can that just be like a condition and wait for exit? It's like, oh, if it's a child process, then I'll do the reaping.
I didn't want to bring this complexity to this type. I
But,
wanted
like,
to be very, very simple.
if you
Well, how
call-
does it introduce complexity though?
Yeah, like if you're calling open here with a PID, does it throw if it's not a process created by your process?
It makes an explicit check whether it's a child process or not.
But why? It seems like that check is adding complexity where every single one of these methods would work just fine for any arbitrary process handle.
You
It's
may get
not
access denied,
going
but
to.
like, whatever.
Yeah,
Then you didn't have access to that handle. Like, don't do that.
but you can have access to handle to just open it, but you may not wait for the process exit, or you may not be allowed to kill it.
So then don't call wait for exit and don't call kill. Like hopefully you're not in the business of calling wait for exit or kill on arbitrary handles that you've gotten.
Yeah. I haven't performed like a very detailed analysis of how safe process handle is used. But
Okay.
since it provides no public APIs, I think maybe it should be safe for me to assume that I could make it work.
Yeah, because it has no unique API right now.
Right. Like, presumably if you have a handle, presumably you, the application developer, know the context in which that handle was made available to you, and presumably you, the app developer, know what operations are appropriate to perform on that handle. Like it's not our responsibility to stop people from trying to kill arbitrary handles. Like if the app developer does that, like that's on them. Stop doing that if it hurts.
Yep,
Yeah,
I agree.
I think we're mostly in agreement here. Like the type system might offer a little bit of safety here, but in the end, it's not worth the duplication.
Yeah.
Well, it's
So-
also not worth us getting our own checking logic incorrect either.
Mhm.
Like, why are we passing a process ID in the constructor? Like, we should be able to derive that from the handle itself, shouldn't we?
Because on macOS you don't have a handle, but you have a process ID.
So existing handles null.
It's basically ignored as of today. So the way I have implemented it, but I'm open to changing it. But the thing is that on Windows, we always have had process handles. On Linux, a while ago, process descriptors were introduced. On macOS, there is no counterpart. You have just process ID. And this is why people have asked us to give the ability to like, so they start the process on their own somehow, but then they want to use our higher level APIs. And this is why I introduced this open method here that accepts process ID. So you give us a process ID and we kind of, we make it transparent to you. So I would be absolutely fine making this constructor internal and just keeping the open method, which would do the right thing behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's got, like What's the value of dangerous get handle on Mac? The PID?
Mm,
0?
my prototype returns -1, but I don't know how it works as of today for safe process handle with process. Because I think that the process type exposes the handle.
It does.
So I have no idea what it exposes, and I don't have a Mac to quickly check. I have just Windows and WSL.
Fair enough.
Yeah, the Surface as proposed, it's kind of tries hard to avoid platform specific things. And you can see it in the constructor where the process ID is or the handle is ignored on Mac. I think we shouldn't be doing that. When there is a API that only makes sense on Mac, create API that only makes sense on Mac, and tag it with supported only on Mac. Attribute. And this is presented as low-level API, so I think it's perfectly fine to have OS-specific APIs in low-level API.
So would you agree that we can just make this constructor internal and keep the static open method?
No, I think it's important that people can wrap like process that they create themselves using this handle, or basically kind of same thing as you do with file stream and the file handlers, right? You can kind of open file handler yourself and wrap it, and I think it's important that this API supports that. And I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to always force people to go through process ID if they have the OS native handler that's better than process ID.
Well, if we say we're merging this with the existing safe process handle, the constructor that takes the pointer / handle and the bool already exists, so we don't
Okay.
have the option to hide it. The one that also takes the PID, we don't have to make public, but we can make the open method a static on it.
It sounds good to me.
Yeah, Jan, wasn't there also a desire to make a lot of these public to make the p-invoke code gen easier?
Yeah, that I think should be the goal of this. Like on Windows in particular, there's like long list of options how you can create processes, and it doesn't make sense to expose all of them as APIs, right? And
Right.
The start suspended method is kind of related to that. In my opinion, it's very Windows specific. I don't think we have actual use case for Unix that's source real scenario, but I can be convinced otherwise. So my take on the start suspended method would be that, people, we can approve it as an API, but for the implementation, we might want to decide that we want to implement it later only once we see a real need for it. Because I would rather see, if it's like really solving a Windows specific scenario, I would rather see people just invoke create process themselves with that create suspended flag, and then pass the handler that they get that way into this to manage APIs.
So quite plenty of our first-party customers are doing this on their own, and they're not happy about this, of just maintaining the copy of our code to start the process just to have it started suspended. And I get your point that we have not received request to implement it on Mac and Linux, but I was able to implement it using GitHub Copilot, and it works perfectly fine. And Mac, the POSIX spawn provides a dedicated flag for it. So my approach was like in my prototype, see what we can get implemented cross-platform on every OS, get the common denominator, and it was part of it. And for starting the process suspended, the process issue has more than 10 upvotes, which is quite a lot for a process API. And based on what I have seen in PowerShell and in Visual Studio, they do start plenty of suspended processes, and I think it would be great if we could provide a utility for that. But I get your point that we could make it Windows only at the beginning. I don't mind doing that, but I believe that we should provide it for Windows because I have seen plenty of people doing it.
Because I'm pretty sure Linux has a suspended process. It's what happens if you hit Control Z in Bash. Until you run the bash intrinsic BG, the process is suspended, and BG resumes it but detached.
Yeah, but that's kind of different concept from what this does, right?
I mean, it's a different way of getting it, but I'm just saying if Linux already has the suspended process notion, I don't see a reason why we wouldn't use it.
But the process isn't suspended; it's backgrounded in that case.
Not until you run BG. Control Z
really?
puts it to sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Clearly, don't use that enough. My bad.
Yeah, when you forget to run BG, you're like, why did this never finish? It's like, oh.
Right. Yeah.
And theoretically, there's a way that you can reattach to it, but if I hit Control Z, BG is always the next thing that comes out of my hand.
Right.
And POSIX also has POSIX spawn start suspended flag.
So for kill and signal, why are we having a Boolean parameter of process group? Why wouldn't those just be overloads? Sorry, not overloads. Why wouldn't it be kill and kill process group and send signal and send signal to process group?
I just mimicked what the process was doing here. We have like a kill method that takes a Boolean parameter, and I think it uses a different name and it has a different meaning. It says, I think entire tree or kill process tree. I don't remember the exact name.
Fair enough. If yes, it's bool entire process tree. Fair enough. Saying because you're mirroring what we did on process is fine.
Yeah, but here I wanted to clarify one thing, because the way process implements it, once you kill it with this Boolean set to true, then we seek for all of the children, for their children. So we basically perform a recursive search of all of the processes, and then we kill each of them individually. It takes a lot of time. However, here I use the entire process group word in order to make it clear that we are going to kill the process group for you. So before starting the process, you need to tell us, I want to start a process group. And then we kill entire process group. So it makes killing all of the child processes just a single syscall and atomic. We just delegate it to operating system. However, it requires you to provide it upfront.
And what happens if you call process group or kill process group on a process that you didn't say start process group? Does that also kill your current process?
I think it would just throw. Or I would need to double check what exactly happens.
I would assume if you don't say create a new process group, it stays in the current process group. So that's just me wondering, are you terminating your own process with that call if you're not careful?
Definitely not.
Kitty off the keyboard, please.
What's the Boolean return value here? Is it like this process is already dead?
Yes.
Okay. So it's kind of like hash set.add. Like bool is I did the work, false is someone else did the work.
Exactly.
Okay.
And again, and this is another thing that process does as well. And I decided to mimic it because I need it in a few places. Where, for example, I had an operation with a timeout. That I have reached the timeout. I was like, okay, so now I need to kill the process. Oh, it has exited. So maybe I shouldn't, throw timeout exception because it has actually exited.
So if the Boolean on this kill is actually different than the Boolean on process kill, then I think I would be happier with it being separate methods.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And then it would make also it easier for me to document it properly using the XML docs. That in order to use this method, you have to specify this flag when creating the process.
Yep. Okay. Send signal. Are we happy with those verbs?
Yeah. Just one more thing. We haven't discussed the start method, and I just wanted to say that it accepts the option back and then null label save file handles input output error. If you specify a null, we are going to open the null device for you.
And we previously made standard in, standard out, and standard error as save file handles, right?
Exactly. And in the other proposal that I really doubt we are going to have the time to discuss today, we also provide an API for creating pipe that gives you save file handle.
So this does make 2 weeks in a row that I thought we'd get through 3 things and we got through maybe 1. So.
No, it's good. This is a good API. It's useful to spend time on this. Do you envision that those parameters should be defaulted, or is forcing the caller to pass null good enough?
I want to force the user to think about this.
Okay.
Yeah. Overall, the problem with default for starting the process is like, what should be the standard input, output, and error of the process that you start? And historically, .NET was starting a new process with the parent process, input, output, and error handles. However, sometimes it's problematic in scenario where parent process starts a child process with output redirected, and it starts another process that is long-living, and then the parent waits for the end of file to be reported by the child process, and the child process exits, but the pipe was derived by the grandchild process, and it keeps it open, and the end of file is never returned. We have an issue like this. We had actually 2 issues, 2 edge case bugs like this reported. And I have seen that Go and Rust took different approaches. So one of them, I don't remember which one, by default you get null handles when you start something new. And for the other one, you derive everything. And since this is a low-level API, I want to force the users to make the decision. And we provide them with all of the APIs, right? Like you can get the null, you can open console, open standard input, output error handles, and you also get the ability to get the pipe handles.
What's the lifetime of the handles you pass there?
That's an excellent question.
Like if I open a file handle, do I get to put it in a using? So I've disposed my copy of the file handle, but it'll still write to that file?
So it depends on the exact type of the file. And the tricky part is, like with regular files, I think like it's kind of obvious. So if you keep it open, really nothing bad happens. But if you create a pipe and you provide the right end to the process, again, end of file won't be signaled until you close the parent copy of the handle. So I have learned it the hard way when I was like implementing this prototype, that I was like starting a process and I was like, oh, I got the output, but I didn't get end of file. So what my prototype as of today does, it basically literally checks if what you have specified is a pipe. And if it is, it closes the pipe just right after we start the process. To make it more user-friendly to the users, so they don't need to be aware of that and they are less likely to run into deadlocks. But I understand that this may not be intuitive approach. But I don't see any valid scenario where somebody would like to keep the pipe opened after starting, keeping one of the end pipes open after starting the process. But with file, you could give us, you could open for regular files, you could like open a file handle, allow it to read and write, give it to the child process for writing to standard output, and then keep reading it in the parent process.
I mean, auto closing it if you think it's a pipe feels weird.
I agree, but as I said, I do it. You know, one of the promises that I want to make with my new APIs is that it will be way less likely to run into deadlocks. However, this is the low-level advanced API, so I would be fine if we decide to ask the users to explicitly close it every time. It was my invention, you know. So
yeah, I mean, it might make sense in context. I guess I was actually concerned about the other way, but I think you, which is if I want to launch a process and redirect its output into a text file, can I use my file.open in a using around the process start, or do I need to keep the handle open for the whole life of the child?
You don't have to keep it open because the process has a copy of your handle.
And so I don't need to pass it to inherited handles. Things will just the correct thing will just happen.
Exactly.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, if the pipe thing makes sense, then maybe it makes sense. Yeah, I find it surprising on hearing it, but I do seem to recall when writing or when taking a operating systems class in college that everyone got wrong that they called fork and then didn't call close on their pipe. So they then got confused when stalls happened. Okay, so we have start suspended and we have resume, but do we need a suspend?
We could implement it, but I haven't received any feature request to be able to suspend a process that has been already started and it's running. But on Linux, since we expose the send signal API, I think you can just send stop signal or pause. There is a signal for that. Jan?
You know, I would expect that anybody who kind of wants to play with the suspend resume things, they are likely going to use pinvoke to do you know, stuff to that process while it's suspended. You know, how far we want to go in creating convenience wrappers for what people can do with interop. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, I guess we can add it later. I'm just asking for balance. All right, so I think on POSIX, the verb itself is signal. So do we need the verb send? Do we think it's cleaner? Would
Oh,
we
I
rather not
see.
have it?
I don't know. I was hoping you would be the person who solves this problem for me.
I like just using the verb signal because it matches what we do in most other places.
Yeah, like I would personally use signal as a verb.
Yeah. And then in the
Signal's
parameter, we're
fine.
taking signal as a noun, which is even better.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it is both. So we're signaling a signal.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, signal me when you're done is a valid English sentence. All right, so signal and signal process group. We get rid of the two once we get rid of the. Yeah, I like that. It looks pretty.
to be fair, I don't hate send signal either, but I think signal's perfectly fine. So yeah, I'm fine with this.
Where kill is. I mean, maybe it's different on Windows, but I assume kill is on Linux that it just calls signal with sig kill.
Exactly.
And so then kill process groups and signal process group sig kill. When Windows maybe goes the other direction. But
Yeah, it's just since we are talking about the names on Unix, the kind of the native name is kill. You basically send signal by kill command or kill API or all that, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep, kill dash hop. Hang up the phone. Or kill dash 9, which is just sig kill. Wait, no, kills 11?
Well, it's -11, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely -9 for the command.
yeah, the problem with the signal numbers is that they are not consistent. You know, say 9 is kind of uniform, but you know, the number of other signals don't have same numbers between different Unix flavors. And the way we have designed the existing APIs that takes the POSIX signal, you can either send the actual signal name, you know, say 9 if you know you want signal 9, and no question asked, or you can use these aliases that have negative numbers and they get mapped by the API to the actual signal name on the given platform.
That's kind of clever. But for things where it is consistent, it's a little confusing, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess it just leaves wiggle room for when some other platform walks up and has decided to rename or renumber kill.
This is why sometimes programming native syscalls in C# is hard, because you think this const has exactly the same value on every platform, and it turns out that no, on Mac OS ARM64 it has a different value.
That one's fun.
Yep.
Okay. All right, and then wait for exit. I feel that that just comes from process.
Yes, but the difference is that those APIs don't take standard output on error into account. They just wait for the process to actually exit. We don't check for end of file, anything like this. And every OS exposes a native way of doing that.
Is process exit status new?
Yes.
You just didn't include
It's a
it here?
struct that It's included. If you go up a bit, yeah, over here. So basically, it's the exit code that we had so far, but also signal. And the reason that being that on Unix, something can either have the exit code or the signal. And the way we have mapped it for process, we are returning like 128 plus the signal for exit code. And I think we should keep doing it for the exit code because it makes the code easier to check. Like if exit code equals 0, then do something. But based on the feedback from David Fowler, I decided to provide this information, which is additional information if the process has been signaled, and information whether the process was killed by the API. Basically, some of the high-level APIs, we will get to this later, but if you, let's say ask to capture just the output and you provide a timeout, then we should most likely kill the process. So what we are going to give you, so the exit status also contains information whether the process has been terminated due to timeout or cancellation by us.
So, like in try wait for exit, if it's going to return false, what values are you getting here?
If try for exit returns false, it means it has not exited yet.
Okay. But you didn't say you return a nullable status. You said you return a status.
It's a struct. Do I have to make it nullable?
I mean, it's a struct, so it'll have a value. So, what's exit code,
Yeah.
what's signal, and what's canceled?
Yeah, so it would be default, like 0 exit code and 0 signal, which would be wrong. So we should add the nullable annotation.
Okay, and then I will note that your proposal, you seem to be the only one who can create it, so certain aspects of testability become harder because of that decision.
Why is this a struct?
As opposed to a
Because
class or an enum?
As opposed to a class.
It's very small. I didn't see a reason to make it a class.
Well, it sounds like the default for any type of data container should be a class unless there's reason for it to be a struct, no?
Yeah, but if you are me and you're obsessed about performance, then you think differently.
I mean, if
So-
you're obsessed about performance, you're not using process APIs.
I mean,
You will be
yeah, if
using the
you're
new
this
APIs
obsessed.
because they're actually faster.
Yeah, but this is a grain of sand relative to the rest of it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but speaking of this, I can say that on macOS, by using different syscalls for things like .NET Help, I am observing, like running .NET Help and capturing the output. On ARM64, 20% improvement, or on x64, even 50% improvement.
Nice, but not because
because-
this is a struct.
Right.
Yes, of course. Just because I'm using like syscalls that are native to macOS.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't mind changing it to a class, and I don't want to spend too much time discussing it. If you believe it should be a class, so let's make it a sealed class. And the only question I have whether the constructor should be public, so people could create their own exit status.
Like, I don't think it hurts.
Yeah, I mean, I would care more if there was like an abstract class or interface that allowed you to return these or use these. But yeah, I don't think it hurts.
Yeah. You'll want to seal it though.
Absolutely. And structs are
Just-
sealed by default.
Well, also because it's equitable, and having a class that implements an equality operator that's not sealed is a recipe for disaster.
Agree.
I don't know if we just skimmed past this when I wasn't paying attention, but just want to say I love the wait for exit or kill on cancellation async. Like unironically.
Yes,
It's a long name,
actually-
but I really like it.
I do have one piece of feedback on that actually, which is your synchronous version takes a time span and your asynchronous version takes a cancellation token. Like Why not take both for both the synchronous and the asynchronous?
Because there is only a single API in .NET that does that. I think it's Semaphore Slim or something like this, who .wait async. So I wasn't sure whether this is the right thing to do. Like, because I have basically found only one API that does that. So I was like,
The reason it looks strange to me is that a cancellation token isn't an asynchronous version of a timeout. So it's weird that your synchronous and your asynchronous overloads would take like completely different concepts. Like it sounds like they should both take the same concept or both take both concepts.
Do we have any sync APIs that take cancellation tokens? I don't use sync APIs.
Task.wait.
Yeah, task.wait, of course. Yeah. Yeah, it must be pretty common.
We did
The parallel library.
Yeah, in FTG3 we did suggest that cancellation token may be better than timeout for synchronous API, or at least a good alternative.
It's more flexible,
Yeah.
for sure.
It's more flexible. It's harder to make a cancellation token around a timeout. Whereas if you think that a common scenario is that somebody just wants to say like wait time span for minutes 2, that's a lot easier to do in a call site like you have here than to say like, okay, let me make a cancellation token source. Let me get a cancellation token from it. Let me pass it in.
yeah.
So you want both for both timeout and cancellation
I-
for sync and async?
I don't want cancellation token for the synchronous ones because supporting all of the possible scenarios will be hard to implement. And the reason for that being is that each operating system exposes an ability to wait with a timeout for the process exit. And the timeout is always expressed in milliseconds. So supporting always timeout, very easy, cheap. Adding cancellation token support, possible to the synchronous one, but at the expense of performance penalty, and I wouldn't just feel good about this.
Should we have a timeout for the async one? Because I feel like some people are like gonna avoid the timeout if
Yes.
that's really better. Like because there's no async version of it.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Like a cancellation
Yeah.
token isn't like, it's not an asynchronous version of a timeout. Like if you have a timeout on the synchronous one, you should probably have a timeout on the asynchronous one as well. Otherwise, you've removed functionality when going to the async version, which is weird.
Cancellation token. I guess I don't know what the canceled state of. So this first one, if you pass a cancellation token backed by a timeout, you're going to get an exception.
Yeah.
But it's not going to kill the process.
Exactly.
And then the second one, if it cancels, you don't get an exception, but it does kill the process.
Yes.
Okay, because this is an exception variant of this one.
Right. And I hate to throw this exception, but I want it to be like
Consistent.
consistent. Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
we don't have a good async try pattern.
Yeah. I was thinking that maybe I could return a null label status, but yeah. So this is why the API shape is what it is.
So
this was my best idea.
So I mean, we can certainly add an overload of like wait for exit async that takes a time span. All it would, if you give it one, presumably its implementation, unless it can do something clever with the OS version, is it would just make a new cancellation token source from the time span and then call token combine with the token you gave it.
Right.
Which means we're adding an overload to let people, or to, instead of teaching people that cancellation tokens can inherently have a timeout.
Well, it's because getting a cancellation token from a timeout is not a trivial thing to do, unfortunately.
It's just new cancellation token source of timeout.
But that's the thing, you're now
It's pretty
introducing
trivial.
you're introducing an entirely new type though, cancellation token source, which most people don't know even exists in the framework.
Fair enough.
That's true.
That's why I said it's not trivial. Like, it's simple once you know the trick, but knowing the trick is like the 95% hurdle.
Okay, so are you wanting it on both async things?
I think it makes it just strikes me as odd that going from sync to async, we're changing the pattern. Like, cancellation token is not a direct async pattern replacement for a timeout.
Right. And even if we have the one with the timeout, though, it'll probably also need a cancellation token. Most people might pass default too.
Yeah. Like, we can, it's not a hill I'm willing to die on. It's just, it's really weird that we're changing the pattern here in that manner. It can always be added later. It's not a huge deal.
The thing is, if we had the timeout version that took a cancellation token, would we want it to kill on cancellation? Or would we want it to not just shorts, exit, or just, return on cancellation and then keep the timeout?
I mean,
I just want to add like cancellation token from seconds or something.
Oh,
and then
so
this
you
whole
have to
thing would
create a
go away.
cancellation token source. Yeah, but then you
Right.
don't dispose it, or I
Yeah.
mean, I hear you.
yeah, but I think the disposing is why, because it creates a timer.
Well, for the simple, for the
but
simple
timers.
case, you could
Fun
clean up after
fact:
itself.
timers don't get disposed in .NET. Remember? Calling timer.dispose as of like .NET Framework 4 or 5 is a no-op. Remember? Because I think when Steve Tobe looked at it a while back, it was cheaper just to leave all of the existing schedulers around, and every time the OS single underline timer kicks in and says, "Hey, it's time for me to kick something off," all it does is it goes and looks through all of the register timers and says, "Oh, there's actually nothing for me to do," and then it goes back to sleep.
Fair enough. So yeah, the problem with adding a time span timeout to wait for exit or kill on cancellation async is that does feel like the timeout doesn't kill because cancellation token is canceled was not true.
Right. This would be wait for exit or kill on timeout async, and it would take only a timeout.
It's weird to have something that takes only a timeout, though. Like, that goes against framework design guidelines. It should also take a cancellation token, even if only just to exit early, even if it doesn't actually kill the process.
Yeah, because
Well,
that would be because I think we should
typically
not
when you
the one that's or kill. I don't think we want to mess with.
typically when you take a timeout and a cancellation token, the cancellation token short circuits the operation,
Right.
as opposed to timing it out.
Because
Right. No, I hear you. I mean, it really depends on what it is. Like, it's a wait API, so cancellation tokens normally don't short circuit the operation on a wait API. Of course, now if you're saying you kill due to a timeout, the timeout should kill it, but that doesn't say anything about the cancellation token, which should do what it normally does for a wait API.
Right.
yeah.
Then maybe it's just overly complicating things then, and we leave it as the original proposal.
Yeah, I mean, the
But
wait
add
for
an
exit
element string.
async with an extra timeout parameter seems fine, but the or kill one I think just is where it gets confusing.
Right.
Yeah.
So what if it was just or kill, which would unexplicitly mean both timeout and cancellation?
No, because if
That's
this is
the
called
thing, though.
wait for exit or kill async, then if I cancel it, you're not killing it because
Right.
I said cancel the wait.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it only took a cancellation token, then it would be like cancellation obviously meant kill it. But if it takes a timeout and a cancellation token, that's me canceling this task, not me canceling the process. So
Nonetheless, yeah, I actually liked this proposed. That's how I started. I like wait for exit or kill on cancellation async. That seems useful. I could see easily using that. Anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I see the other stuff just does get confusing.
It does. Yeah, so I'd remove the second method in that group as well, the one that takes the time span. and just leave it as Adam's original proposal there. And maybe I can convince Steve or someone else to do cancellation token dot from time span or something.
So now that these are class, I assume you want to return null here for it didn't exit.
Yeah, of course.
This gets a like not null when true
Right.
something.
But I'm also glad to hear that you like the method, because I have seen this pattern everywhere. Like, wait, if it has timed out, kill. And
Yeah, super handy. I'm sure we'll make use of it.
Okay. So next up is, we talked about it a little.
The story behind POSIX signal, it was created to be able to register a handler for certain signals. And you cannot register a handler for forced termination, for sick kill. So we didn't need it so far. But right now, I would like to also use the same enum for signaling. And I want to send sick kill. So I would like to extend it. And another thing that I have found useful would be sick stop. But what I really, really need is the sick kill. So I don't need to have another enum.
Yeah, I mean, I think having all of the well-defined ones is fine. Like, I don't know what of these we're missing, but
yeah. Maybe the only thing that I should have set would be the value equals 9, because it's 9 everywhere, and I didn't know about the pattern Jan has mentioned. Namely, the negative values mean it has a different value on every platform.
No, I think Jan is saying like we use negative for everything. It just so happens if you do know, you can hard code the number. Is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jan.
Yeah, that's correct. On the other hand, sick kill is special. You cannot register handlers for it. So, it's kind of not usable with the existing, or it doesn't make sense to use it with the existing API that takes the POSIX signal. So I wouldn't mind, making the sick kill S9 here, because I think it's like so entrenched in the Unix ecosystem that, it's very unlikely to ever change.
Yeah, but like, why get creative? Like, is sig term ever gonna
yeah.
change? Isn't it on like 11 on every platform? Like, we could have done it for that.
The consideration is partially that even if it's 11 on every platform today, if the POSIX standard doesn't strictly require it, then some platform we support in the future might deviate.
And that goes for sig kill too, right? I mean, for sending the signal technically.
It depends on
Well,
if POSIX specifies it or not.
Yeah, I might.
Technically, yes. In practice, the 9 is so entrenched, I think, for sick kill that it's never going to change in practice. But yeah, we don't need to be creative here. Sure.
Yeah, I see no need to be creative, but you're right. Like, and yeah, I mean, I even knew the sig kill number, and sig term's 15, not 11, as we see here. But yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
like,
and
this table says hup and int and quit are the same everywhere, but we didn't make those positive. We made them negative.
yeah, but they are not that special. They are kind of ordinary signals. The sig kill and also the sig stop is also a special signal. It's actually redundant with the suspend, right? It does the same thing as suspend. So,
but stop
I'm not
definitely
sure
needs
whether-
to be indirected.
Yeah, but I'm saying that we might not need it at all, because we can say, oh, if you need to send sig stop, maybe you should just use the suspend API. I don't think we added this. So let me say it differently. Instead of adding the sig stop, it might make more sense to add the suspend API and tell people to use the suspend API to send sig stop.
enough. So go back and add.
But I think that for the current state of the API proposal, I'm fine if we just remove the 6 stop and don't introduce the stop method in the API. Like, so if there is a demand, we can always add it later.
Okay.
All I need right now is sig kill.
Okay. So do we want to add it as -11 or do we add it as +9?
I have checked in the meantime, POSIX does not require a certain numeric value. It just happens to be 9 on every platform, but it's not required by the standard.
Yeah. I would be concerned that some jerk platform, Genix, when I make Jeremy's Unix, will decide that it should be I don't know, 12. That's an
So you're a
opinion.
masochist. Yeah.
You've known me for a while.
And also it could lead to certain assumptions that, oh, this value matches the actual
Yeah. So
value, why others don't. So to be consistent with the existing NO values, maybe it should be just 11.
yeah. So what
Minus
does this get? Will this only receive a negative number signal?
I think as of today, we always use negative values in the managed layer, and in the native layer, we do the actual mapping too.
Right. But I'm saying if you understand somehow, I guess, is the signal only set if you yourself kill it with kill, or can you detect the signal that killed a process otherwise?
On process, so the process exit status returns signal, which gives you information that it was sig kill.
Sorry, I
Does
mean
it
from
work
the
if
OS.
something else, not .NET, does it? Yeah, like, do we get it, like, if some other Go process
Like-
sent the signal?
Like if I send the signal sigsegv into a process, assuming I can, what number am I going to get back? Because we haven't mapped that one. So do I get +11, or do I get a null, or do I get what?
I see. Mm,
Because this is the problem.
Yeah.
If we don't have all of the named signals defined in signal, if we get a number we don't understand, are we giving it back, or are we suppressing it?
You're right. You have just found a bug in my implementation. I don't handle all of the possible scenarios. I used to because I had my own copy, but then I tried to simplify it. So yes, you're right. We should add all of them, but I don't know the exact list as of now. I can double check in my PR where I was removing them.
But the idea is to map it to the negative value or the name value if we can, and otherwise leave it as the positive value.
Mhm.
There is a convention, right? It's actually, I don't think it's actually set in stone. There is just a convention on Unix how to get the signal that probably killed the process from the exit process. Is that right? So the way you get the signal, you get the exit process, and then you can call some macro on it. Hey, give me the signal. Do I remember?
Yeah, I
it
assume that's
correctly?
what this is doing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it means that we don't need to kind of have mapping for all of them. We can just say, okay, if it's one of those that we don't have mapping for, the signal will just return null, and you will just get exit code, right?
Oh, we would return null instead of the raw numeric value.
I think that
that's
would be
also an
better.
option, but
Null would be better.
I sort of think so, especially just because so many of these codes aren't the same on all systems.
So, I mean, if we can't convert it to a negative value, you'll know that. Like, you can ignore the positive values if you want, but like not providing that information seems
Well, it would just be weird
annoying.
because
Like,
you'd write in like, if I get 11, then print sigsegv, and then in the next version we add sigsegv as a named version, and now you never see 11 anymore. So like, it feels like we're being nice, but in a way we're actually being forward mean. Like it's
Can
a
we add
common
a
problem
custom
every time we try to
comparison?
indirect.
Yeah.
Like this makes sense as an input value, but once we're giving it as return value, we like Levi's favorite word, policy, comes into place.
I'm almost tempted not to translate it at all, but that's also unfriendly, of course.
I mean, it is a class. We could extend it later with raw signal and be like, here you go. It was positive 11. Deal with that.
Okay, another thing we could consider, is it possible to have enum? Yeah, it is. Map multiple names to a single value. For the super well-known ones, we could map multiple times and then not do the conversion in the exit code. But yeah.
You can have multiple
Like-
names point to the same value, but you can't have the same name point to multiple values.
Oh, of course not. Yeah, of course not. I was being, yeah. Anyway,
Like,
all right.
what are people expected to use this API for? You know, like when a process crashed, you know, it's kind of crashed. So
I think the most common scenario is to detect whether it was graceful or not termination.
so you really only care whether there was any signal at all, not and you know, kind of the
No, to differentiate between sick kill and sick term. But this is only based on my limited understanding of how people use it. So take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, I think the
But
other third common one, assuming it does show up in the API, is SigSegV, which is not a mapped code for us right now.
yeah, SigSegV, it comes in a group, right? There's SigSegV, SigBus, and you know, maybe two other ones that if you care about one, you probably care about all of them.
I've made lots of segmentation violations. I don't know what the bus signal is.
we could, yeah, I guess I see your point, Jeremy, about the breaking change. You could just only set it if you know the translated value, like the negative value. And if people later really actually need obscure signals, we could add like raw signal later with the int or
Yeah.
something.
Yep, that matches my my feeling on it. All right, we are over, but I think we're also at consensus.
All right, one more thing. Adam, I saw the last comments about having the argument list as a constructor parameter. It does look nice. If you scroll down to the bottom of this issue, someone was commenting during API review. Pretty. Look at that. We can add it later.
and if you refresh, you will see my response that I have just posted a few minutes before this meeting has started. So I believe that adding a params constructor would really feel nice, but I think it makes it possible to fall into this trap where people send a single gigantic string that represents multiple arguments, and they don't recognize that this API requires them to be splitted up front, and they get just an error, most likely a weird exit code saying that something is wrong, and then they spend time debugging it.
I'm okay with it not being params. Like
Yeah,
as
that was the final question: is what if it's not params and you have to type the square braces?
Sorry.
No, you were presenting, so I mean, as it turned out, had read the last comment, but yeah, I mean, sure, there's always a risk. I mean, there's a risk with the arguments list that people could squash params together, but I think this mitigates it enough, and it's so clean. And I think arguments are super common to want, like more than environment variables or anything else when you're launching a process.
And
I agree, but if it's enumerable, we need to perform a copy, because
yeah, it could be iList. It could be iList if you
also
don't want to copy.
We can also just talk about it some other time. It's additive.
Yeah, it is additive. Maybe our overtime.
Yeah, I will say
But
that
I like it.
Fred did comment once in the hallway that his opinion is if we had had square bracket syntax in the beginning, we would never have added params. And I think I agree with him.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes adding a third parameter potentially possible. Not that we likely ever would. All that kind of thing.
But all right, so here's what I have. Remember a million years ago when we were talking about the options bag? Arguments and inherited handles gain setters. Environment did not. We renamed kill on parent death to kill on parent exit. We got rid of the resolve path method and said if you care about resolving the path custom, you need to pass a resolved file name, so a full path name.
Absolute path.
Yeah, absolute path. Thank you. I'm like, there's an IO word here. I just can't think of it. We said we don't think we need a new type. If you come back, if you find that doesn't work, then we can, have the discussion again. But let's start with not introducing a new type for the child handle and just say it's a process handle. We broke kill bool into kill and kill process group. We renamed send signal to signal and broke it into signal and signal process group. And we made process exit status a class and gave it a public constructor.
Jan asks in chat, should working directory be a string?
It's currently a directory info. I don't think we talked about that at all. Anybody care?
I don't care, and most likely for the sake of consistency, it should be a string if file name is a string as well, and we have talked about it.
I feel like that makes sense to me.
And another comment is the equals and non-equals operator on the process exit status. Do they make sense? Like,
But when it's a class,
Yeah,
no.
we may not need it once as a class. Do we care?
I would even argue, whether equals make sense on it at all, because
Yeah.
like
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it
do
just
like this.
comparing
Let's
exit
keep it
code?
simple.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just compare exit code if that's what you want, or compare the components you care about.
It's it's sealed, so nobody can do anything weird with it. And if we want it to be equatable later, we can do so. And Chad
And
asked,
one
could
thing
it be a
about-
record class? And we don't make any public API using the keyword record.
And I also wanted to mention that the API does not expose an API like success, because it's perfectly fine for an application to fail and return exit code 0 if it's implemented by somebody that likes doing such things.
Yeah, I mean, also if you have void main, success or not is probably in standard output or error. And
Is it
then
ever
there's
legitimate to
all of our-
return something other than 0 for success?
I was
don't
gonna
know if I've seen
remote
that.
our remote executor tests by default return 42 on success.
There you go.
That way you don't get the classic computer error of you forgot to set your return code, and so you end up with accidental 0. And so we decided that 42 is success.
Mhm.
And then the old .NET tests returned the percentage of tests that passed. So 100 was the success code, and everything else was failed. At least I
Then you
think they
don't
were
have to
trying for
parse
the
standard out.
percent that passed, because everything just returned either 0 or 100. But since it was 100, I think it was supposed to be a percentage. All right. Process exit status class, made the CTOR public, removed IEquitable. All right. Are we happy?
I am. Now I can
Yep.
start prompting.
I'd be even happier with the arguments in the constructor, but if we don't have enough buy-in or people or whatever.
Yeah, and again, it's adding things can always
It's
be done in the
additive.
future. So
It can be. It's just such a good idea. It is almost a one-liner.
I guess
kind of.
for now only adding sig kill.
Yeah, but no, this looks good.
All right. All right. Well, sorry, Adam, that we couldn't clear both your issues in the same meeting, but we got rid of the big one.
Oh, I'm very happy about the outcome. Big thanks for all your help and feedback, and I'm really looking forward to getting this merged and used everywhere.
All right. Hey, look, I can see the bottom of the list. We'll see how it looks next week. So, thanks everyone for joining online that did, and I guess watching later if that's what you're doing. And definitely had some good feedback. Interesting space. I don't think we've really touched the process class since .NET Framework 1. Probably just bolted a few things onto it. This is the first rethink. I've possibly heard that next week is a holiday in the Czech Republic, which might complicate this whole middle section here of our API review, but we'll see what we get. Plus, it looks like Tanner shoved a thing up in the front, so by assigning his milestone, which everyone should do. All right, that's enough rambling. See you next week at our same .NET time on our same .NET channel. Until then, I guess see you later.